Hello, this is Lisa LaRose here on Connect to Love on PRNFM, and I'm joined by the amazing and wonderful Michael J. Rust. And today is a super, super special day because we are talking about vision and why having a vision is so important. And I just wanted to share a quick nostalgic, just like jump back into my childhood. So when I was a kid, I grew up in Canada, and there was a show on television called Vision On. And it wasn't until Michael and I started talking about what it means to have a vision that thought about that television show popped back up into my mind. And as a kid, I was always fascinated because they would start the show with writing the name Vision and then a capital O-N, and then they would write the mirror reflection of it right next to it and then turn it, and it would look like a frog. And I was always, I always tried to practice doing that so that I could learn and sort of see the world differently. So when Michael and I were having this conversation about vision and what it means, it popped back into my mind about this program. So I looked back on the wonderful world of the Internet to find out a little bit about it, and if my memory served me right. And what I discovered that it was actually a British television show that was designed for deaf children, which as a child I had no idea that it was done. And they did the show live. And so the concept of the show basically was that everything was either done in pantomime or without speech. They encouraged the audience members to send in paintings and artwork, and as the show progressed, they started getting close to 12,000 drawings of children every week. And so they had a lot of limited staff, so they started inviting grandparents to come in and sift through all of the different images. But I found it so fascinating because as they were sort of really very much pioneers in different visual techniques, they would do a lot of different animations and things that would really speak to children that were hearing impaired. And I'm sure back in the days, I think it launched in 1964, which predated my birth, but it just it grew. And by the time that I was able to watch it as a child, but they used trick photography as a child. It introduced me to what sign language was and live action. It just sort of seeing things in a different way. And I think that's really what having a vision is all about, looking at your life and seeing things in a little bit different way. So I would love to welcome Michael J. Rust, and who does see life in so many different and unique ways. And so welcome, Michael. I'm so excited and eager to explore this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. You're also always awesome and fabulous to do this hour with. And, the concept of vision, we had some prior conversations about it, it's such a unique topic. And I tie this to your imagination, vision, imagination, so we can kind of cover all the bases, because having a vision for yourself, a unique vision for yourself, your life, from maybe the smallest stuff, maybe like when you a vision for your day, how you see your day going, is important, because it kind of gives you some mental pathway that you can follow, and it sets up your energies, in my view, to focus your attention or focus your energies on various things that you'd like to do. If you imagine, let's say, envision something for yourself through the day, how your day might go, you can write a list down of, like I do in many cases, I'll write a list of some things that I expect to happen that day. And then so I can focus my energies in making sure that that they actually do happen, or that they come close to happening. It's just a matter of focus, I guess, of focus and attention on them. With regard to my own dreams, and it's important to dream. It's important to have a vision for yourself from that perspective of where you see yourself going. And I got to tell you, I'm one of those people. Was never one of those people who ever knew what he was going to do. Matter of fact, I'm 64 years old. I'm still saying that. I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest. Yeah. 64
I'm
years
getting
young.
younger
64.
every day.
64. Six. I sometimes I just tell people, I've 6 decades. That's all. 60. It seems to be less. I've had 6 decades on this planet, and I am still asking myself where I'm going. I'm still, dreaming about being somewhere, and looking at how all the bits and pieces of my life up to this point, the experiential wisdom and all of that, the experiences fit together to help me accomplish, my particular mission here, and my soul's mission, my soul's purpose. I didn't know what I was going to do for 3.5 decades of my life from a career perspective until I was 27. I was in school. I was in college. I had no idea. I went in as a business major. Said, I don't know what the heck I want to do. I don't want to be an accountant. I don't want to be just an administrator. I don't know how this will play out, but I'll go through the motions of getting these particular classes under my belt, and maybe I'll figure it out. And I think the biggest challenge for many young people today is that they're being, in my view, forced to make decisions about the rest of their life at a moment in their lives when they are just discovering who they are. And it can be a big challenge to say, I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be a lawyer, or I'm going to be a mechanic, or I'm going to be this trade or college, and I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. If you are unaware of what your gifts and talents are, you're not tapped into them, you haven't figured out what brings you a deep sense of satisfaction in your life, it can be a challenge to create a vision for yourself over the long term. And I was just kind of letting things unfold, kind of floating through life and seeing how the pieces kind of fit together. And I can look back on it now, and it all makes perfect sense as to why I was guided to one place or another, and the people I met, and how one of those particular people in particular helped me develop the career I've had for the last 38 years. And I think I was watching something the other day, and this is kind of what sparked this conversation about vision, and that is that you don't know. Everybody wants to put the nail in the coffin. They want to know exactly what the dimensions are, what the depth is. They want to know all the little particulars before they can step forward. And really, life is about having a peripheral vision of what you want to do, and then stepping into the unknown. You have to step into the unknown. You have to step off the cliff and trust yourself. Have faith that you will land. It's just a faith in yourself, a belief in your ideals, or your what's coming to you, your vision, so to speak, for the future. It's important to do that, because if you're not engaging in something that you engaging in the unknown, or taking a risk, you really aren't giving yourself the full opportunity to experience your life and to evolve way beyond the person you are today. Would you agree?
Oh, so much so. When you were speaking about that, Michael, I think about all of, what came to mind is actually your photography, because you take photographs from your mirror. And when I think about that, it's like objects in the mirror closer than they appear. So oftentimes there are things that it's just shifting that perspective. Yeah, you're going forward, but there's things that are going on in your periphery that if you just expand that focus, and it's sort of like speed reading, right? If you're reading word by word by word versus whether you're reading blocks of words, and also what you're comprehending. So I believe that when you have a vision, you can have a large vision, but you can also chunk it into smaller goals, smaller attainable goals, that so you don't get discouraged, because no matter what it is in our day, we are all going to come up with some sort of roadblock. I don't care what it is. And sometimes, you can laugh about it later. I just had a challenge with a poor guest that was staying with me, and I said to her, she had just an awful thing that unfolded in her life, and I said, I know things seem very challenging right now, but if you look back, I'm sure a year from now, you'll see exactly why the universe arranged things the way that they did. And I think that when you can do that, and when you're setting a vision or you're setting a goal, there comes, you have different measurements of success, but success is defined by what it means to you, and I think that's what's so important, is that you have to, when you set a goal or come up with and define your vision of what you want in your life, it has to do, again, with you and how do you define that and what is important to you, not the consensus of the group. And you come up with this vision and say, okay, what do you think about this? Hey, Michael, and maybe there are some insights people can share with you, but ultimately it has to be what's coming from inside you so that it can propel you onto a bigger journey. And I think that that's what is so, so important. I wanted to ask you, Michael, there was a quote that I read, and it was so funny because it said, vision is the ability to close your eyes and imagine a future that doesn't exist. It's the ability to see beyond the mess that might be in front of you, to abstract away from it and clean it up and see a better future that doesn't yet exist. And I thought that was so interesting, and it made me think of fear, because in fear, one of the teachers that I studied with, he always said that it was a hallucination. And I think that sometimes the obstacles that we put before us are almost like that, a hallucination. And I'd be interested to see, do you have any thoughts on how to dissolve any blocks that might be keeping people from their mission or their vision?
Well, yeah. And before I do, though, I want to, it helps me when I'm writing a podcast or writing a book or whatever, and I'm focusing on a specific topic like imagination or like vision or whatever. It helps to go back and get the definition of what it is. And so let me just put forth the definition of imagine. Okay, a form of mental image or concept of. As in, I couldn't imagine that she expected to tell them, okay? I imagine a road trip from Philadelphia to Chicago, okay? You kind of envision it. The second aspect of that is believe. Believe something unreal or untrue to exist before exists to be or to be so. You have to form that mental image, then you have to combine it with belief. Okay, believe it exists before it actually does. And the second aspect of this is suppose or assume, as far as the definition. Here's a word the line they give. After Ned died, everyone imagined that Mabel would move away, right? So just suppose. Imagine to outwit Heydrich. Imagine, that's basically the line they use. I find an example of just suppose. Suppose we use this kind of verbiage. Just suppose this happened. Just suppose that happened. Imagine this or imagine that happened in your life. How would you feel? What would you do? What energy? How would it? What kind of energies would it produce in you? What would you think about that? How would you respond if that happened? And so when it comes to blocking and removing blocks that to your imagination, I think about how when we grew up as children, we had a highly expansive, infinite imagination for things, right? We imagined things that weren't real were real. We played with imaginary things. We had such a great time. And then at some particular point, those we respected, parents, grandparents, whoever, shut it down. They shut it down. And so now it's like, no, that doesn't exist. You've got to get into the real world. Everything has to be factual, right? Everything has to be evidence-based. And the conflict with that is that when we become aware later in life, hopefully we do become aware, that we are the creators of our own reality. As we were doing as children, we were creating our own reality. as children. And if we had just been able to carry that on, imagine where we'd be. However, very few of us are able to continue that, because to step into the real world of education and indoctrination, I should say, into society, the imagination has to be shut down, because we have to, our world needs compliance in order to operate and function. If you have 300 million people imagining all over the place, who would go to work from 8 to 5, right? How would the wheels of government turn? How would anything happen? So we have to get back to being able to imagine or envision something for ourselves, and start small. I always say start small. Start small about, like you mentioned something a few moments ago that I didn't write down, as far as how you begin. If you want to start using your imagination again, imagine something simple during the day. And that might be, for me, it might imagine a way for me to help someone in my business, right? Mm-hmm. You pose a question, and then you expand on that question in your mind with no limits. And this is the major issue that people do, is they get caught up in the how. How does this happen? Forget about the how. Asara Lovejoy had a great book, The One Command, and one of the major keys to being able to manifest what you want in life is to be able to sidestep the how. We have to sidestep the how. That is where we all become tripped up. You imagine something brilliant for yourself. You imagine yourself, I don't know, I'll just throw this out there, winning the lottery, okay? And I remember a gentleman up in the Northeast who not only won $1 million once, but he won $1 million twice in 3 years. And when interviewed, about, hey, did you ever think you'd ever win? He says, absolutely. He says, it's what I imagine for myself every day. He says, I see myself winning. He was so absolutely confident. He was so confident that what he had imagined was real, that for him it was. You create this resonance, right? This resonance for yourself. If your state of being, what you're thinking and feeling at the time, creates a state of being. And that state of being is actually the same thing as a frequency. It creates a frequency. So you have that frequency that you're resonating. And you and I we're talking about a video that I hope we're going to put a link to this video in our description, because you have to. That one about the gentleman from Austria, and it's about when you resonate. Resonance becomes the physical. Your resonance can become the physical. What you're resonating, what you're thinking about, imagining, what you were imagining, the energy that you put into it becomes your state of being that resonates a frequency, and that frequency can become real. It's a fascinating twister, so to speak.
Absolutely.
It is. You'll sit there. It's a conundrum, I guess, when you think about it. It can be. You sit around, you think about this, and you go, wow, I want to be the best swimmer in the world. If I cannot envision myself being the best swimmer in the world, and I can't feel what it would be like to be the best swimmer in the world, and I don't see myself finishing first in all the heats and in the final, if I don't see myself doing that, how am I actually going to be able to do it?
Right.
It's part of the building block of achieving a goal, a dream, or intention. You have to envision. You have to imagine yourself, put yourself in that first person, in that scene. And this is what trips people up, because they get caught up in the how details. But how am I going to get to that point? Or how am I you know what? Your state of being, your resonance, what you're imagining, and what the energy creator from that creates the circumstances that help you get there.
Right.
All you have to do is be alert. There's a big key. You got to be alert to what's going on around you. You got to have that because we're talking about peripheral vision, to be able to see the things and see the big picture of how things are coming together around you. Because if you ask the universe, basically imagining is asking the universe to produce this for you. Creating a vision for something is actually doing just that. You are putting it out there. You add feeling, you add energy to it, you add purpose, you add belief, faith in yourself that everything will work out the way it needs to. Now, it may not work out exactly the way that you envisioned. In many cases, as I'm sure people have heard, it could be perhaps greater than you envision, right? And so you have to allow that latitude. You have to be able to not box yourself in. And so or get caught up in the details. Getting caught up in the details creates doubt.
Right.
Doubt is the killer of intentions, goals, and dreams. Doubt. That's just doubt. You have to have zero doubt. You have to have complete faith and belief in yourself, and then remain aware and alert to what's around you that is manifesting to help you get there. And years ago, back when I was in my 20s, I was basically focused on seeing myself being in a place where I could make, back then it was all about being able to buy a house and create a life in the whole nine yards. And I figured to do that, I'd need about $100,000 a year in income. And I was making 19. And so I'm going, got to get from 19 to 100. So I need an opportunity. I need to manifest an opportunity. I need to have to envision myself doing something, being in a position where I have an infinite ability to create the wealth that I wanted, to accumulate the wealth I wanted for myself in a way that helped people. Because I'm not the kind of person that would want to, beg, borrow, and steal to make $100,000 a year. The morals, it doesn't fit with my ethical and moral nature. And I hope it doesn't fit with most people that were listening to this program. Because that always comes back to bite you. I learned something early on. Yeah, if you tell even the slightest fib to get something, to get somebody to do something, if you lie to somebody, tell a half truth, at some point in your life, it's going to come back to you. If someone else is involved, if you were greedy and you told a white lie, a full-on lie to actually get somebody to move in a certain direction so that you could make money, you could benefit in some way, it's going to come back to haunt you. And even if it's not involving money, if it's involving relationship, if you set up a relationship in the context of a lie, it will eventually explode. Or implode. The whole situation will do just that. It's best to be completely and totally honest. It's interesting. We were going to do eventually a show about relationship, but I always like to throw relationship in because relational connection is the foundation of absolutely everything that we do in life. And in my view, it's the purpose for why we are here. Relational connection helps us evolve. It helps us grow beyond who we were yesterday and who we are today. And I told somebody the other day who was in a relationship quagmire. I told him, I said, look, you're half my age and you have to learn this. You have to learn that in relationship, communication is the key. If you're establishing a relationship, you have to communicate. You have to let them know where you're coming from, and you have to ask them where they are coming from. This is not a difficult conversation. And you have to do this before you become intimate. Best to do it then, because the problem then is that your intimacy is I'm not even thinking of the word right now, but it's an implication of something greater than what you perhaps are willing to give. And you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you are causing somebody else distress because you weren't honest about where you were in life. Now, if you're in a situation where things unfold, You're going to let things unfold. You're fully open, fully willing, and you want to find out if this is something that is purposeful and meaningful and can last, that has legs, then great. However, if you are whatever you're feeling, you need to communicate it. There's a way of doing that. Unfortunately, our schools don't teach the art of communication. And in my view, that's the most important skill that we can learn. If relational connection is the foundation of our evolution, we need to be able to communicate with people. And somehow that gets lost in the mix. Yeah, you can write, you got an A in English, but that doesn't mean that you can communicate how you feel to another person. It boggles my mind that this doesn't exist in our world today. That it's not seen as being valuable. But it is the most valuable skill that you can actually obtain. And I call it relational diplomacy. Relational diplomacy, where you can talk to someone in not a you frame of mind, but a me, and not an I do this, I do that, and not you do this, you do that. More like, this is how this makes me feel when this happens. I don't like to feel that way, so I make sure that I move in this way. It's people have arguments, and you're throwing gasoline on the fire when you're talking about, I do this, you do that, I don't like it when you do this, instead of talking about yourself. And so, anyway, that's a little relationship tangent, but it's all kind of interconnected. And because people do envision, the person I was speaking to was wanting a deep and abiding relationship. And I said, okay. I said, sit down and imagine the perfect mate for you. Can you do that? He couldn't do it. He couldn't relate to what I was talking about. I said, you got to sit down and imagine the kind of feelings you want to have when you're with someone. Can you do that? Can you envision not what this person looks like, because looks aren't the thing. Mainly it's how you want to feel when you're with someone. When you're sitting there snuggling with them on the couch watching a movie together, how would you feel if that happened? The feelings you connect with are going to generate the resonance, the frequency that's going to then help manifest that feeling, that situation in your life. And I'm sitting there telling them, I'm giving you these pearls, these nuggets of wisdom, this gold that you can go out and buy the world with. And you're hooked on the drama. He's hooked in drama. Drama runs his life from one thing to another. And we must be willing to sit down and meditate and envision, and during that meditation, ourselves and whatever wildest dreams that we actually have for ourselves. Gosh, I love doing that. Don't you? Come on, tell me. I know you do. It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
I think back to when you were speaking about what is possible, and going back to that video, they reminded me of Roger Bannister in the 4-Minute Mile. And before that, they said it's physiologically impossible that anybody could run the 4-minute mile. And then after he achieved that, all of a sudden, it's sort of like the 100th monkey. It became possible, and people were doing all sorts of amazing athletic feats. There's a woman that is, I believe she's 91 now. She's a gymnast, and to watch her is phenomenal. To see what this woman can do with her physical body at age 91, I have to applaud her, because her vision of herself, I would imagine, includes not going into decline. I think so much of what we see in the media, you reach a certain age and then you're expected to go into decline. I practice it with my animals. For instance, my one dog, I have him at the doggy chiropractor today. So he was at the vet about a week ago, and it was over 6 months ago. he was diagnosed. One doctor said he had Cushing's, and then another doctor said he had thyroid, and somebody said he was going into kidney failure. And he's a senior, what they call a senior, and he's 14, and they expect him, this is just part of the aging process. So I thank them for the information, and I do what I do, and I call him my puppy, and I give him lots of kisses and lots of love and lots of nutrition and follow with the holistic things that I knew. And we went last week and got his blood work back, and it's perfect. No issues whatsoever. No kidney, lots of kidney function. All of his values have reversed themselves. And so now when I see him, I'm like, hey, puppy, guess what? You have perfect blood work. You have perfect blood. I just tell him that. I reaffirm that to him every day. That's my vision for him. And the vet asked me, he said, well, what do you expect with your dog? And I said, my deal with him is I will support him on his journey. And when he doesn't want to be here anymore, he can either let me know or he can check out. But but I see it for so many individuals. They see themselves not well. Whether the vision that you want for yourself is wholeness, happiness, wellness. I go back to what is it that we think? What do we believe? I love that you brought that up, Michael, because when I was we still have to wear masks certain places, and on the front of my mask is the word believe. And I forget sometimes that it says that, but it's sort of the way I want to put my face forward, my foot forward. I want to put myself into that belief, whatever it is. I know that things can change, and I get a little stubborn sometimes, and that's the Norwegian side of me. But if I believe something is possible, I will do everything I can within my power, legally, ethically, to achieve those goals, just as you had said. And I think if you look back at the way the atomic model was taught, it was proton, electron, neutron. Everybody learns that model, and then it shifted, and now they understand that it's a series of concentric circles that sort of pulse and vibrate, and it goes along with that whole theory of vibrance and resonance, and things change. And just because something's in a textbook doesn't mean it's so. And so when you utilize that power of the imagination, things shift. And it went from particle physics now to quantum physics. Now the whole physics is just completely blowing my mind about non-reality physics. I can't quite understand, but I do understand that at one time people thought there was nothing faster than the speed of light. And then they found there were tachyons that actually go faster than the speed of light. And how can that be possible? But if you look at anything, and light, just like everything else, is both a particle and a wave. And when you have that within those little tiny particles, it reflects light. And what I don't know anybody who has gone through life that hasn't seen a prism as it's reflected through light, through a window or a rainbow. And if you look at that, we don't see the particles that make up that rainbow, but we see all of these beautiful colors, and we're enchanted by how wondrous it is. But you absorb the beauty, and you like, wow, you want to find the end of that rainbow, and that would maybe be your vision, right? But as those particles rearrange, or you're driving down the road, maybe that rainbow's not visible anymore. Does it mean that it's not there for somebody else, or does it mean that it doesn't exist? No, it's still there. And I think that's the thing with a vision. When you have a vision, it's like that rainbow. How do things arrange? How do you choose to see what colors are most poignant to you? What do they vibrate and inspire you the most? I think too, when you have, and this goes back to a lot of the older teaching, there is no beginning and an end. At the end of the day is the sunset, but eventually there'll be a sunrise. And within that time frame, there is darkness, right? between the sunset and the sunrise, but it's still, there's wondrous stars. And I was just watching something, and it was, oh my goodness, it was about the Polynesians and how they were amazing navigators. They traveled at night. They used the stars to get where they were going, and I think this little short that I watched was on an island. It was about a Pitcairn island where there's only 40 people that live there. And it was sort of the people that landed there were the survivors from Mutiny on the Bounty. Right. Right. Mm-hmm. And there was, I think, they kind of kicked Captain Bligh off, but they went to this island and burned their ship, and they had to make things work. And I first of all, that wasn't even in my consciousness until I watched this little video about how, and it was just fascinating to me, the flora and the fauna, and that this whole world exists beyond what I can even see. And it makes me want to travel there. They say it's not easy to get there. It takes like 4 days and lots of jumping over hoops. But now I have a vision of some other place I'd like to travel to. I don't know when it's going to happen or how I'm going to get there, but that's a new little blip on my radar, because I would love to experience that. I'd love to experience what it's like to be in a space where it takes 3 months to get supplies, and see wondrous things and see how people forge a new path. It's fascinating to me. But I love that. I'm like, I have to learn more about this navigating at night by the stars, and thinking about, because the Pacific seas are not calm, and to be able to be doing that, and they didn't have, the Polynesians, I'm sure, didn't have big vessels. I think they traveled in wooden things. It's a new area of exploration for me. But it is. Yeah. So the whole Michael, concept. I would say, like, for you, like, if you were envisioning a rainbow and all of the magic that it brought into your life, what would you see as the direction, or where would it take you in your travels, I guess, is what I'm asking. I'm not articulating. Well, I apologize.
You're talking about where is it in the world that I would like to go, that I see myself going and imagine myself being? Yeah. It's funny, because I told you I set up a vision board for myself. It's something I've been meaning to do for years. And I had given it a lot of thought, and I started putting together things for it. And I read a lot of travel magazines, Condé Nast and the other travel magazine. And I read about a lot of places, and some of those places I've been, some of them I've been close to but never got there. I'm fascinated with Egypt, Egyptology. Very fascinated by. We just bought airline tickets to go to Turkey again next September 5th, 2023. Yeah, that would be the fourth time I'm going back. However, the first time I'm seeing some places I haven't seen in 50 years to see how much they've grown. And there are 3 archaeological sites that I'm going to visit that I have never been to. That just fascinate the heck out of me, and because I'm fascinated by the Greco-Roman culture, the art that was created, the mosaics, and there's a city over there that I meant to look up for somebody, and I haven't done it yet. That is north of Syria, about an hour and a half to something like that, north of Syria, in the mid portion off the Mediterranean, that has the biggest street mosaic in the world.
Wow.
And they built this beautiful hotel above it. I mean, a modern structure. That's got to
be magical. Wow.
Yeah, so you've got this glass walkways that walk around this thing, and you can see it.
Oh my.
And I want to bribe the archaeologists in charge to be able to take off my shoes and walk down on the street, and give us a personal tour of this long street that is underneath this that this hotel is built on top. Big glass building. It's absolutely beautiful.
Wow.
And that even exists. Yeah, it's one of the most complete.
If you
the
think
most
of it,
complete
will you send me the name,
thing.
and then I'll put a link up for our listeners. I'd love to learn more about it. I love the idea of the glass and the color. I mean, it's almost like they brought a rainbow onto the street, right?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's one of those things that you think about and you go, wow, I'd like to go there, and that's really how it happens. You know, I mean, you otherwise, if you can't envision yourself, you know, being there and making it happen, it won't. The city is, hold on just a second. And the city is called, hang with me just a second. Nope, it's not Antioch. Bear with me just a second. Yeah, the city is in the southern portion. I will figure out. I almost saw it a second ago.
So what are the other two sites that you are intrigued by?
The other one is called Göbekli Tepe, which is Göbekli Tepe is the oldest. Oh, it's called Antakya. 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 And it's a beautiful, vibrant city, and it's got this particular thing. Now, the other one is near this place called Sanlurfa, 2 kilometers out of Sanlurfa, which is northeast by about, I'd say, an hour's drive, hour and a half drive, not even that maybe, from Antakya. And it's Göbekli Tepe is the oldest settlement. It's the oldest settlement being excavated right now. It's 12 to 15,000 years old. Where we're talking about a settlement that has carvings and there's mounds there. It's sort of like a Stonehenge kind of thing. They carved these beautiful 15-foot high blocks and out of a quarry and drug them however what their distance was, and it's one of the oldest settlements being excavated right now in the world, where there was active no written language. However, it is so advanced and astrologically advanced on top of that, you know, because things are all set up with the stars, coordinated with the stars. But it's a mound, the one mound, and there are 15 other mounds that they haven't even, they're not going to get to for decades.
When you're speaking about it, I get shivers on my arms and my legs. There's something really special about that place. I'm
there is. I just want to walk around it and get an archaeological view of it. I've seen it several times, and I've in documentaries, and I'm sure National Geographic has been there. But you know, it's interesting because it all starts as I said in the beginning. You know, overcoming hurdles. It's a challenge for most people to think about getting on a flight and traveling 15 hours to another country and getting around that country. And, you know, there's a way of doing it. You contact a travel agent who lives in that country. That's what I did this time, because we've got so many different places we need to coordinate. And you need to coordinate all the transportation between these various places, right? What's the best way to do it? So I connected with a travel agent who would help us. There's 4 of us going, make the connections. We tell them where we want to go, and we work out the timing and the connections and all of that, and the guides that we would need to be able to get the historical perspective, because you really want to get a guide who can bring it to life. It's really important. There's that word vision again, who can give you the vision of what the place was and what was happening. I've done that with Ephesus twice already, and it's spectacular. And so start small. I mean, envision yourself going to, you know, if you've never, the average person in the United States, and I know this is a worldwide show, and I don't think it's any different for most countries, but the average person in the United States in their entire lifetime never travels more than 75 miles from where they were born. 75 miles. That's it. And so that makes everything outside of that 75-mile barrier question mark. And it also means that you're developing your perceptions about everything outside of 75-mile radius. You're developing your perceptions via something that is third party. It's not firsthand, which means that's how you're perceiving your world, is through information that others are telling you. And your informational source, whatever that is, and we all know that news tends to focus on the negative more than the positive. And to the point where you might not want to leave your 75-mile area because you're thinking, oh, my gosh, it's so bad out there. And it really isn't. The world isn't bad. And when I travel, when I travel, the last thing I envision is myself having problems, myself being in the middle of something. I don't want that energy around me. I don't want to project that energy outward. I've never been pickpocketed. I've never had a problem with anything in any of the travels that I've had. However, not only do I not envision that, I envision things going perfectly. I envision where I'm going, and that I have assistance from, whatever, my angels and guides, that I remain alert, I remain aware, and I ask questions and stay away from places that have been known to have negativity involved with them. In other words, the part of town that could be the most challenging, no, we just don't go there. It's not worth the risk. However, most of what we do in terms of traveling is just stay alert, stay positive, and plan where you want to go, and then sometimes don't plan where you want to go. Sometimes you just walk into an area of town and you just start looking around and start walking around and go into stores and you talk to people and you sit down and have a coffee or a tea and talk to you never know who you might meet. We meet people from all over the place who come in to do the same thing, and it's so much fun to meet people who are fellow travelers and make that connection. Does it mean, we've been sitting down and I've been invited, come on, stay with us in wherever, Hall, England, or whatever.
For sure.
You're like, you're like, yeah, okay. We'll give that some really good thought because we got, we're busy and everything, but you never can tell. People are so gracious. I invite people down to our house all the time, that we meet who are either coming to the United States, and when Europeans and people from around the world come to the United States, they come for about 4 or 5 weeks because the country is huge. We go to there for a week, 10 days, and don't really get to step into our comfort zone with the place. We don't get to relate to people, and it's all about going on a bus from one place to another and seeing a thing, and then going back to the hotel, eating whatever, and getting on a bus again and going to see a thing. But the real depth, the real treasure is the people that live in those places. And luckily, I've had the ability to be in Germany and stay there and live there for a while and actually meet people and go to places, to non-touristy places, and connect, especially at a golf course. I had a great time playing golf in Germany. And I met so many wonderful, wonderful people. I joined a club for a while and got to meet a lot of people. And I got to be here's something that's always interesting. And I told this story in my audiobook, Zero Adversity, and I think I probably told it on the show. I'm African American. I'm black. So the places that I go in the world, generally, I grew up going to places and living places in the world where we were the only black family. And so I have always kind of considered myself, as I traveled, sort of an ambassador for the U.S. and for other African Americans that are out there. And so I am literally, in most cases, I'm telling you, I'm going to go to Turkey for 12 days, and I'll be the only black person from America that is in any of the places I ever go to. And
really?
It's because, absolutely. It's the places that we're going to go. We'll go to a couple of popular places, and I may see some other people traveling through Ephesus or through Cappadocia, because Cappadocia is the place where they have 100 balloons a morning that go up, 100 hot air balloons that go up every morning over Cappadocia. It's absolutely beautiful. And when I went there 50 years ago, there were no balloons. And it's odd that the person we know that retired over there, a young lady retired over there in a coastal city, because it's very inexpensive to live there. She retired over there from where we live, my girlfriend's best friend. And she actually house sat for the gentleman who started the whole ballooning thing in Cappadocia.
That's fun.
He had the first balloon. Now there are hundreds every morning that go up. And
That's
at sunrise, and it's the most beautiful sight. If you just look up Cappadocia, Turkey,
so now I've
you
got
will see
something
balloons.
else on my my vision board. Thank you, Michael.
I'm
you know
telling
what
you.
I absolutely love about this conversation is and this is another word that we've spoken about, is passion, because as you're speaking about the things that you are excited about doing and the things in your vision, you have a passion about, and you can hear the enthusiasm in your voice, another thing that we talked about. And it's what brings things to life. It's that passion, it's that curiosity, it's that wanting to achieve something for yourself that you may not have ever even dreamed of before. And that's what I love about vision as well, is that it's not a constant. It doesn't have to be static. Just because you put something down doesn't mean it can't shift and change. And
Absolutely.
that's what I love about envisioning, revisiting Vision On, and I'm going to have to go back through some of the shows. But there are moments in time, and I think we capture them, and I love that about Instagram, because our audience, I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. We have some listeners from Slovakia and India and from St. Vincent and all throughout the United States and Canada and from other parts of the world as well. But when I see different people come onto our Instagram page, and I always like to go to their pages if they like what we are posting. And it gives me, their images are moments in time that give me an insight and a view into their world and what's going on, and it opens up new horizons for me. It's just to be able to see what's going on in the world someplace else and think, oh my gosh, I may not ever have an opportunity to travel there, but I can ask you questions about it. And there's a gentleman from Mexico that posted the most fantastic images from the Day of the Dead parade, and I thought, oh my gosh, look at this. This is so beautiful. There's so many things that I've never even imagined existed. And that's really what it is, I think, when you have a vision. You grasp on to something that is personal, something that you want for yourself, something that you imagine, whether it be in your experience or in your knowledge, or something that you want to seek out. And it's that ability. A lot of this stuff doesn't even exist yet. And I'm sure for those scientists that thought about these concentric circles of the model of the electron, going from the model of the electron, neutron, proton, these little things that spun out. Now it's this pulsation. And to me, the pulsating model works so much better because it goes right into the subject of vibration and resonance and what it is. And I think that having a vision is sort of like a roadmap. You know you're here and you want to get there. You might decide to stop for lunch in a couple other places, and maybe you get a flat tire, but think about all the different people you wouldn't have met if you didn't have that flat tire. And that's really what I love about the whole process. And I'd love to hear, Michael, because you have so much passion, and how you utilize passion to bring forth your vision into reality. And I'll let you close out the show because we're coming to close to that. But
coming to a close.
Just in case.
When you were talking about passion, the thing that came across my mind, interestingly enough, is not necessarily me, but our listeners out there who have to ask themselves what they're passionate about, what makes them enthusiastic about living, and to take a moment to take a journal and just kind of write down some of those things, and because it's good to design your life around what you're passionate about. It's good to, and the reason for that is that happiness, your own innate happiness, flows forth from deep within you when you experience the satisfaction of realizing what you imagine, what your vision is for yourself, what you're impassioned by. even just talking about it, being involved in it. I know, just a quick little story, 30-second story. A friend of my girlfriend's does scrapbooking. She has a scrapbooking business, and she has a big scrapbooking event at Disney World every year. And women from all over the country, and some of them outside of the country, come to Orlando to about 250 of them. They come and they meet for 5 days of scrapbooking. And the scrapbooking place is open 24/7. There's food, there's fellowship, there's conversation. It's when a bunch of people come together and they participate in something that they're extremely passionate about or impassioned by. And when the deep connection that you get from talking with other people, connecting with other people who also have a love of what makes you, of what you're passionate about, is one of the most amazing things. I would do that when I go to jazz festivals. I love smooth jazz, and I've been going to smooth jazz festivals since 1988. And every time, it's wonderful to get 2,000 people or 10,000 people in a place all at the same time, gathered for 4 days, 5 days, that have a gift that, from all walks of life, that have one thing in common: they love what they're hearing. They love that music, and it's wonderful. Everything just falls away. Whatever problems you had in your life, they fall away. And the happiness and the joy and the smiles that you get. And this is what people have to do. You have to. I encourage our listeners to, whatever it is that they're passionate about, connect with other people who have the same passion. And because that connection will take you farther in terms of your own personal growth, your own personal evolution, and it will ignite happiness, a flame of happiness inside of you that has been there all along, but it will make it brighter in ways that you could now never imagine. It's beautiful to see. So keep envisioning, keep imagining, start small, and then build. Just envision the grandest thing possible for you, and then share. Make sure that if you have kids, that you instill that in them as well, to basically imagine the grandest vision for themselves, always winning a game, winning everything, right? If they're playing a sports of any particular kind, or if they're participating in something, imagine themselves experiencing the highest level of whatever that is, and believing in themselves and having the faith that they can actually get there. Whether they do or not isn't important, because they'll learn a lot along the way that can help them make other visions a greater reality for themselves. Okay, and that's what I like to say. Keep imagining.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I couldn't have said it better. And thank you all, and thank you to Jesse at the station. We're so excited and looking forward to our next
conversation. Yeah. It's coming down the pipe.
Absolutely, and keep your passion alive, and know that your vision is just closer than the end of the rainbow. That's all I can say.
That is so true.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep. Have an awesome week.
You too.